Well, thank you so much for joining us. Just to kind of give a few introductions, I'm Hayley. I am the Performance Marketing Director at Candid Sky. We've created this podcast so that we can talk about all things marketing and just give a little bit of energy and personality to our business as well. And this is David.
Yeah, I'm the Operations Director at Candid Sky. So really good to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys. So where are you? Where are you located?
We're in Manchester. We're in Manchester in England.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, last week Brighton SEO was on, so I've just come back from there and now starting a fresh week here, and that was really interesting. It's basically, I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but it's a giant conference full of SEO nerds, and that's all you talk about for 2 days, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, I've heard of it. That's actually how I connected with Josh, was because he was at Brighton SEO in San Diego last year. And so I'm from North Carolina, and Andy Holland, we came across each other's feeds in LinkedIn, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy knows what he's talking about with SEO. And so over time, Andy told me about Brighton in San Diego. So I went and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And that's how I met, so on and so forth.
Yeah, they've started doing it in America now, haven't they? And they've got one in San Diego in November, I believe.
Yep, I will be there.
We're trying to get tickets. I'm like, come on, we need to go. It's for the knowledge.
Oh, yes, you need to go. And I want to go to the one that's there in England someday, because I was watching my feed, and all of you guys are posting about all these different people who are speaking and some of the things that were said. I was like, oh my gosh, that would be so fun. So one day I hope to get to England, and get there for the original.
Oh yeah, you'll love it. It's great. Let's just start off with a little bit of an introduction as to who you are and your journey into the world of SEO, because I absolutely love hearing about people's stories and how they get into SEO.
Alrighty. Well, my name's Crystal Waddell. A lot of people know me as the host of the Simple and Smart SEO Show podcast. I have just loved meeting SEOs from all over the world and, discussing how we can make SEO and just optimizing websites more accessible to small business owners, particularly entrepreneurs. And I got into SEO kind of in a strange way because I started out on Etsy as a handmade seller. I still make things like this sign behind me. I don't know if you can really see it. Yeah, I make different wooden signs and letters, and I help parents celebrate their athletes, their senior year. So I make a lot of stuff. I ship them, nationally and globally. But one day I was clicking through on Pinterest, and I realized that when I clicked on Pinterest, it took me back to Etsy. And Etsy was like, hey, look at Crystal's stuff, but look at Hayley's stuff and David's stuff too. It's pretty nice, and David's is actually on sale. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm working so hard to drive this traffic back to my shop, and they're actually promoting other businesses. So I realized in that moment I had to have my own website, and, eventually I learned Shopify. And then it wasn't until 2020 when I had a heart attack in 2020, in September 2020. I had this thing called broken heart syndrome, because I'm worried about everybody's problems or whatever, I don't know, I can't fix anything, but just affected by everybody. So I was in rehab. I was the superstar in my class, because everybody else 80 plus or whatever. But that's when Clubhouse came out. And so I was so excited, I'm on the treadmill or whatever, and I'm listening to Clubhouse. I'm on a treadmill, sometimes trying to talk in the rooms. And it was just so much fun. But that's when I learned about SEO. So I had been, in business since 2014, selling on Etsy, having my own website, and not fully understanding that there were things that I could do to optimize my website for search and actually get found. Thankfully, when you talk about what you do, you show up in search results, right? To a certain extent, if people are looking for what you sell and what you do. But it wasn't until 2020 that I fell into the knowledge of, actually optimizing on purpose. And so that just kind of birthed everything else.
Wow, that's a really inspiring story, actually. And so currently, are you working with other clients, or what is your day-to-day with SEO and your involvement in the industry, aside from the podcast?
Yeah, well, after my heart attack, I realized I just wanted to live a creative life, so I was like, I'm not exactly sure what that looked like, but it turned out to look like optimizing websites. So I have the podcast, I have my own store, and then I do consulting for people and also Shopify store owners. And I have a small group membership called the SEO Squad, where I help entrepreneurs navigate SEO on their websites. And so we actually meet once a week, face to face, just like this, and we talk about our websites. So one thing I've realized about SEO is a lot of people kind of stop at traffic, but when you're an entrepreneur, you know that traffic is only like step one, of the whole process. And so, we talk all the way through traffic to client journey to conversion optimization to, like having systems after the sale, so it starts with SEO, but I feel like SEO is branding and a whole bunch of different things wrapped up into it. And, it's just kind of like an evolving definition of what it means to optimize your website.
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually just recorded a podcast with somebody who owns a branding agency. We were talking about how it's all relative, really, isn't it? Without great branding, you may have a great product, but without great branding, without great content, without having the good visibility, then you're not going to get the revenue or the conversions that you're looking for. So I think everything needs to work in unison. And David, that's something that you've kind of taken back from Brighton SEO, isn't it?
I think a lot of the time, Brighton SEO is a very SEO heavy, quite nerdy conference. People talk about the technicalities of SEO, how to, please the search engines. And I think there was this really good talk that I listened to where the speaker was trying to get everyone's head out of the sand of just thinking about SEO is the kind of marketing journey. And it was like, well, you should be working with your paid teams and your brand teams and your video teams and all working together towards a common vision to achieve an outcome, which is, it might be more revenue, it might be more leads. But if you stay in your own kind of world of this is SEO and this is what I do and this is what I'm going to focus on, I don't really care about any other channel, you'll never really get the success that you desire, because there are so many different moving parts within marketing that make up a whole.
One thing that I'm really keen to get your opinion on is the future of SEO, because 2024 has been one of the most pivotal moments for organic search. I mean, we've got the introduction of search generative experience. What does that look like in the US at the moment?
Well, what's interesting is sometimes it shows up and sometimes it doesn't. You know what I mean? It just depends on the search, because, sometimes it will ask me if I want, an AI generated overview of whatever I was searching for. Other times it just gives it to me. And so, that's varies from search to search. But then when it does pop up, all of the other search results are pushed way down. So even if you are the number one, result on the page, you're still you have to go beyond the fold or multiple scrolls or whatever to get there. So, it's one of those things where it's if you can get mentioned in some way or cited in some way within that search generative experience, then you're going to be a lot better off. But I also wanted to add something to what David said, because, as an entrepreneur, I don't have the luxury of having siloed departments,
Yeah.
So I've just sat back and admired from afar that I'm you've got one person who does SEO, you've got one person who does social media, and then to hear that those departments don't necessarily communicate or work well together, because they're trying to take credit for, what's going on, or, people are, being judged upon whether their department is getting the click or not. It's no, everybody's getting the click, because people jump around. They jump from social media to search and back or whatever, so there's just so many different places that people should get credit for. And it's not just one place.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with you there. I think, it develops brand trust, and we know that is so important with Google's release of EEAT. like having that brand trust and having visibility on organic social, having like fresh content, having kind of LinkedIn posts depending on the industry, that's something that really helps to shape your brand and build trust before people have even got to the point of conversion. So I'd say that the customer journey isn't as straightforward as I'll make a search, I'll click through to a website, I'm going to convert, because there's so much more to it, and you need that complete holistic approach in order to get there now.
What are your thoughts on SGE, Crystal? Do you think it's the future of search, or do you think it's something, a Google experiment gone wrong?
Well, I think it's going to be the future of search. I remember last year at Brighton in San Diego, they were saying that, oh, SGE is never going to be rolled out. And, some people were really like, and I'm thinking, I've already seen it, because I'm over here, I'm in North Carolina, and I'm like, I've been saying it for a while. So I think it's coming, because like I said, it used to ask my permission, and now sometimes it just gives it to me. So I think it's going to be here. And honestly, I think it's good, like from an e-commerce perspective. Let's think about what SGE does, right now, as its like current model or whatever, it really handles a lot of those top of funnel informational queries, right? Those don't make me any money, So as an e-commerce seller, I'm not necessarily offended or upset that Google's going to answer the basic questions for people. Now, what they can't answer, at least at this point, is or things related to empathy. Like I can empathize with a parent and why they need what I sell. I can empathize with a party planner and why they need what I sell. I can empathize with somebody being on a tight deadline and why they need it quickly. Computers aren't necessarily at that ability to empathize. So I appreciate it from the entrepreneur perspective to be able to focus on a part of the funnel that I can actually control anyway. That's our sweet spot. So I'm not necessarily worried about SG in that respect. Now, where I am a little nervous is like, say, if they start taking away the clicks where products are sold directly from the search engine versus that click through going to the website. Now, my heart goes out to those who are, let's say, affiliate marketers or, and their money is made from those informational searches. But from the e-commerce perspective, I actually think it cleans it up a little bit and it makes it a little bit easier to compete for what you actually want to sell.
Oh.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, actually, how it kind of is going to benefit long term. And where do you think that AI generated content fits into this? Do you think that's part of the future of SEO?
I definitely do. And one thing I wish I could speak more about is like the enterprise level SEO, because, people are generating like thousands of pages of content at a time using AI. And they're like, yeah, people should comb through that, or like a human should comb through each one of those or whatever. I'm like, really? You're generating 1,000 pieces at a time and you're telling me a human's going to go through that? So I think when you hear stuff like that, you understand why Google's trying to combat with the helpful content update or like the spam updates and that type of stuff. So, I love AI for tedious tasks. I love, or like LLMs, really. It's not necessarily AI, but like I love brainstorming with like a Chat GPT or a Jasper. That's my favorite thing to do for like meta descriptions. Who wants to sit there and write meta descriptions all day? I don't. There are great use cases for these tools, but these mass productions of things, and then the other thing with the ability to generate images and things that aren't true. Like we're getting ready to come up on an election in the United States, and I'm like, I just want to go hide and not even turn on my computer as we get closer, because it's going to be really difficult to tell what's real.
And do you think we're going to see like an uptake in people trying to manipulate public opinion through the use of AI?
Absolutely.
One of the more interesting things about SEO that I heard from Brighton was a topic around computational bias as well through the internet, and how SGE will feed into that, because when it comes to people's general opinions or even political opinions, normally they'll search for validation across Google, of like, oh, is this the right thing? What are the pros and cons of this and that? And then they will feed that bias with, SEO optimized content that features in the SERPs, or websites that feature in the SERPs. And the algorithm would really favors to feed them that information. And I think that, the talk around the computational bias was like, the internet is structured in such a way that it will feed you your own beliefs and it will validate those. And they believe that that's quite a dangerous path that a lot of social media websites and Google are going down, where there's no sort of real validation or fact checking to that information. It's just about, if you've got amazing SEO skills, you can have a very strong opinion on a certain subject or information out there that just ranks really well and feeds to the public.
Yeah. Well, and I write for an accountant. And so one of the things that she talks about is like accounting rules and different things in the United States. And the fact is those LLMs pull from, like you said, those top search results. And if those top search results are wrong or outdated or whatever, then you're getting more, even just, not even on purpose, but you're getting more bad content because it's pulling from stuff that's not good. So it's like whatever you feed it, you're going to get more of that. And so that's unfortunate. And then I think the two different friends, I think it was the accountant and then another friend on LinkedIn kind of did their own little studies of, what the search results would return, in SGE. And both of them, whatever they did, it returned like male dominated information, with pronouns like he and, just always relating to men. So that was interesting. It's we've got to be careful about where we're getting the information and then regurgitating it and, using it to reinform the future, because a lot of times it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I guess that's where experience, expertise, authority, and trust, those quality rated guidelines really ring true, because otherwise it's like when people mishear things and then they'll tell somebody something else. It's the same principle, isn't it? And it's a very muddy water that we're kind of heading towards. So how would you say that small businesses can avoid that?
Well, I think it's just what we were talking about earlier, like staying close to what you do, and talking about what because a lot of times I think some of the websites that really, have a problem are when they have like a knowledge graph that's all over the place. It's like you can't know everything, even though you think you can, you know what I mean? So on my website, it wouldn't make sense for me to talk about sheet metal or something when my website is primarily about sports, right? So I think if we stay within our knowledge graph, if we stay within the things that we actually have, solid knowledge and personal experience with, that's going to make a huge difference. And, small businesses will struggle to compete with larger companies everywhere except for that experience piece. Because small businesses are if you're an entrepreneur or you actually connect with your customers, you actually have customer stories that you can share that a lot of larger companies, they don't have processes in place to do that. So I think entrepreneurs actually have a huge opportunity right now to stand out on the SERPs, whereas before, it's like playing against giants, and being a grasshopper.
Yeah, no, it really is. I think, Google's come under fire recently for favoritizing larger companies in the search engine results, haven't they? What's interesting is I've heard a lot of chatter as well that backlinks are no longer going to be a key ranking factor. And I think this has got, my sneaky suspicion is that this is because, larger brands, they have massive domain authority. They have, a lot of backlinks. They've got great PR. And that kind of feeds into those having a monopoly on the search results. But from my own analysis, I haven't really seen a reversal in that. What do you think about backlinks?
Well, I think that, again, it kind of goes back to that knowledge graph, and Google and other search engines have actually gotten smarter, because it's like, okay, if this website, again, is about news, but yet we're over here talking about the best baby bottle, or whatever we're ranking for that. Those anomalies outside of their knowledge graph, I think, are actually going to show Google that, hey, they're not the authority in this. They're not the expert in this. This isn't their main, thing that they do. And so, yeah, links are going to play a role. Money is going to play a role because, again, those larger businesses, they're also the ones who can spend advertising dollars. So from a business perspective, Google's got to balance the, I'm scratching your back so you can scratch mine situation. And then also, make the search engine results pages more democratic, I guess, in a way. But that's a really hard line to walk because you want to keep your advertisers happy, but you also want to keep, public trust. So, I'm glad I don't have to make that call.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on, because, you'd mentioned it in one of your previous answers, is that, one of the statistics that I looked at, especially in the SEO industry, is quite male dominated, and obviously that feeds into different opinions and how certain content is written across the web, with those computational biases that we've discussed. How do you think more women can get into SEO, and what inspired you to get into the industry and be as successful as you are?
Wow. Well, I think, first of all, it just kind of takes an understanding that the field even exists. One thing that I've realized over the last few years is there's not necessarily a degree that you can get anywhere in search engine optimization. It's kind of something people fall into via marketing channels or different writing type jobs or whatever, and it's like a field that has kind of evolved out of a need. So, I think it's tough. I think that there's communities like Women in Tech SEO. They're doing amazing things, kind of mentoring, women to say, hey, if you're interested in this, let me show you like how I did it, or, the jobs that are available, because again, it wasn't until the last couple of years that I even heard of a user experience designer and UX design, all that type of stuff. UX research, that would have been my dream job, but I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm doing it for my own website. I'm helping other people, on their websites, but I didn't know it had a name. So that's one of the big challenges, is just finding out that there's actually fields of study or, an actual job title that does that requires a certain set of skills, and just finding out that it exists, and then, going after the opportunities. But in general, SEO work right now is a little bit difficult to not only get into and obtain a job, but like to retain your job. So I think it's going to continue to be challenging for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, there's an increasing level of stress that I'm definitely seeing within my team, with the ever-evolving landscape. The goalposts are constantly changing. Google, 2023 alone, with the amount of algorithm updates that were rolled out and the new learnings that we had to take from it, it's been a lot. So how do you kind of keep yourself motivated as the industry changes?
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits that small businesses have is that we are small, like we're agile, we can adjust quickly. But more importantly, I think as companies grow and they have more and more stakeholders and more people to answer to, they lose sight of the most important person, and that's their end user, And so for, let's say, a small business owner that, has people walk into their shop, they're constantly talking to their customers. And I think that's the only way that you can weather any storm, because at the end of the day, your customers and, your target market, they're not changing like the algorithm's changing, So if you're catering to them, you don't have to worry so much about the algorithm. And so I know that's easy to say from a small business perspective, but if you can find a way to get really close to your customer and stay there, then I think you can weather all of these changes I think they're going to have far less impact than, they could, because at the end of the day, it's not about, making a search engine happy. It's about either selling your product or service and keeping your customer happy.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more there. And I think, if I'm honest with you, I think that's what the algorithm updates of 2023 into 2024, that's what they've been saying, is that you need to create content that your customers are really going to engage with, rather than, churn out articles and listicles that are going to demonstrate that you know the most to search engines, because people aren't responding well to it. I think this is Google's response to perhaps people are having less of a great experience than they were previously on their search engine. And it's a way to kind of reinforce that you need to be authentic, you need to show your expertise, and you need to build trust with your brand.
I have a quick story about that. When I first learned about, blogging and SEO and all that type of stuff, I decided to try my hand at content writing. And I remember I was hired by this one company to do some sort of apartment, townhome development, in the Northeast United States. And so they gave me, the topic and all of what they wanted. And so I wrote it, but I wrote it like I was writing it to a person who was actually going to live there, and, kind of explaining how much fun they were going to have because it was going to be walkable to this and whatever. And the feedback that I received was, well, this is really great. Like, it sounds like you're, talking to them, but we just want basically like this cold, boring thing. And I'm like, but why? Like, this could rank and the person could read it and actually have an emotional connection to your apartment complex. But, so it didn't take me long to realize like I didn't fit into that mold of a writer.
Yeah.
And, but I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, you have such an opportunity here. You already have them on your page. Why wouldn't you want to just nudge them a little bit more to actually closing on a apartment or a condo?
Yeah, it's like the unsolvable problem, isn't it? I think often businesses get in the way of themselves because of something that they've read on LinkedIn. So it's definitely a challenge, and it's something that we're probably going to face. How do people who work in SEO, because I feel like we have a responsibility to educate business owners and to run with creativity. How do we kind of educate business owners to do better and to want to create better content?
I think we have to remind them of the businesses that are failing around us, especially the large businesses, because I know in the United States, there are long-standing corporations or, legacy generational businesses that have failed even just in the last 5 years. And it was pretty much due to their lack of, or their unwillingness to change, their unwillingness to change how they're doing business. And I try to tell people, I'm like, we're not only thinking about right now, but we're thinking about the future. And if you're not at least considering the future and everything that you do right now, then it's going to be too late, because the future is coming for us, whether we want it or not, right? So we kind of have to use a little bit of, anticipatory, forecasting, I guess, based on like what we've seen so far. But we also have to stay where our feet are. We can't be looking back at this is how we've always done it, or this is the way it's always been done, so this is how we're going to continue to do it. Like the day of keywords and just like making your decision based on like keyword volume that comes from data that's like maybe a year old. I mean, that's done. Like you've got to stay close to your customers. You've got to be willing to like create a strategy that makes sense for right now, not last year. And I think that's the most important thing. If you can do those two things, I think you'll weather the storm.
I can think of a few people who would love to go back to those days in 2008 of stuffing keywords in the footer of the website to get rankings. But you're absolutely right. Times have changed, and whether we like it or not, there's going to be developments within SEO and how their algorithms work and the technology that's used to ultimately get the content that's written across the web. And those things need to be adjusted to. You need to adjust your strategy to those things.
Yeah.
So what does the future of SEO look like to you?
I think the future of SEO looks like branding and personality, because there's so much sameness everywhere. Even like the basics of optimization, like on-page optimization or technical SEO, there's so much that's the same. Okay, so you can do the basics. Yay! I mean, I think the day of just doing the basics are over. It's like, what are you doing to stand out? Like, what are you doing that actually makes you worth, investing in, buying from, working with, all of those types of things. It's like, yeah, get people to your website. Okay, cool. But what are you doing once they get there? I just think everything is leveling up. I think the walls are coming down from the silos of companies. And that's another thing, like people are going to have to learn how to work together. And it's easy for me to see this because I was a volleyball coach and a volleyball player. But, there's that saying that's like everybody achieves more, or it's amazing how much can be achieved when nobody gets the credit. You know what I mean? And so things like that, it's like, that's how teams have to work, and for so long, I think society has just been about like, somebody's got to win. But it's like, look, we're only going to win if we do it together, And so remembering that the competition, is just the future. It's not necessarily another team. It's not another business. The competition is whether or not we can stay competitive and still exist, a year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now. And I think if people can kind of make that, paradigm shift in their mind, then they'll weather the storm of SEO changes in the future. But it's just about, really knowing your customer, working together and building a brand that, withstands all of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there. I think what's really interesting as well is how you mentioned about user experience and how that ties in. I think Google is even showing us how important that is with the introduction of the new Core Web Vital IMP. Like, great, you've got a fast loading website, but how's your user experience? That measures it. GA4, it has engagement time. It shows that, yeah, anybody can create a blog. I mean, it may not be great. It may not have all the bells and whistles on, but businesses can do the basics. They can, you can get your website loading relatively quickly with a plugin, but actually when people are on your website and they're engaging, what is the user experience and how can we make that better? Because I think it all ties into like the changing of people's like attention spans as well. People want to be gripped, they want to be grabbed straight away, and then if that's not happening and if they're not engaged, then all of your efforts, it doesn't matter how interesting your blog is, if you can't engage them straight away and capture that attention span, then you're going to lose them.
Yeah. And they don't want friction. They want it to be easy. Everything is so easy for us now. Like if we have to wait more than 2 seconds, it's like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. It's like, it's 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Like you're buying something from 5,000 miles away and you're waiting 2 seconds, woo. But we have to take that into consideration, and I realized also, from an e-commerce perspective, again, competition isn't necessarily someone who's selling exactly what you sell. It's someone it's another business that has given an experience, whether good or bad, to the person who's buying from your website. So if they've had, an experience one way or another on another website, they're comparing it to the experience on your website. So you could either surprise and delight them by making it super easy, or you could not be Amazon and your shipping takes 2 weeks, I mean, those are the things that your customers are expecting. So you have to figure out, okay, what do they want from this experience? And are we meeting it? And just talk to them, like not talking to customers, I think is going to be one of the biggest mistakes companies make, because you've got to invest the time in the people who are keeping your business afloat, you know what I mean? And keeping your business successful.
So true. You can't just dance around the customer journey by collecting data from everywhere else other than the source, because it's likely that you'll make assumptions that aren't true and it could frustrate your customers.
And I remember, just a little thing like, I don't know if I've already talked about it here or talk about it a lot, but, I sell things for different sports. And so when I very first started out, I thought, oh, okay, I'm just going to put up one e-commerce option for this sport or, for sports in general. But people who come to your website, they're not thinking about everybody else. They're just thinking about that one thing, like my kid plays volleyball. So I'm looking for something related to volleyball. My kid plays soccer. I'm just looking for something. So you really have to create, like, depending on the number of products you have, like hundreds of scenarios and customer journeys to really understand what it is they're coming to your site to do.
Yeah, I think that's always a challenge to relate to business owners who don't necessarily. An issue that I seem to run into is that business owners want a simple website and they don't want to create all of these pages. But there's so much benefit in doing that, because not you creating doorways for people to access your website, but also like customized customer journeys as well.
Yeah. And windows. We used to joke about that on the podcast. It's like SEO is like building windows and doors where people are coming into your house and you're like, whoa, how'd you get there? You know?
I love that.
What's also interesting is how like the organic merchant listings are now becoming more prevalent on like search engine results for e-commerce searches. I think I'm interested to know your opinion on how that's kind of benefited search, or if it has, or if it's convoluted the user journey. What's your opinion on it?
Well, again, I just think it's part of brand building. I like it. Anytime that a product that I sell can get in front of someone, or a product that, a client sells can get in front of someone, that's a good thing. And a lot of these things are free right now. So it's like, okay, you might as well take advantage of free merchant listings, right?
Yeah.
But I think kind of going back to GA4 as well, sometimes they'll give you insights on, how many contact points it takes, or how many touches it takes to get a customer to convert. And, for instance, for my website, I've seen that it was 6. And talking to my client, I know that that's possible, that's what happens, because they may at the end click on a Google listing or a Google merchant product listing to then check out. But their first interaction was through search, and then maybe it was on a site like Pinterest, or then they check things out over on Instagram. I mean, they are everywhere. They will bounce around from platform to platform, just establishing that trust that you are as a company who you say you are, and they're trying to find reviews and that type of thing. So that's the one thing that I feel like the merchant listings are really kind of lacking right now, is a usable interface for reviews for smaller businesses. So other than that, I really do like the merchant listings because it gives small businesses a chance to compete.
Yeah, I agree. I also like the fact that you've got full visibility on what your competitors' pricing is as well, because you can literally drop down and have a price comparison. I think, as we evolve as SEOs, I think perhaps it's even our responsibility to inform our clients of that your competitors like £1 cheaper. Of course, people are going to click through and convert on them. Is there anything that you can do? I think those are conversations that SEOs should definitely be having.
One of the things that I was going to ask, actually, because, and I'll go to Brighton SEO because I just think, it was such a big event and there were so many different conversations and so many different polarizing opinions on the future of search. And I think Brighton have started doing, paid media talks now. So it's both paid media and SEO. And someone from the paid media side, I don't know what the name was, but we was asking them questions on what the future of search is. And he said SEO is dead, and paid is the way forward. Obviously, massively biased in there. But what do you say, Crystal, when someone says SEO is dead?
I no offense to them, I feel like that's a little bit ridiculous, because I feel like search is always going to be relevant until the day that we can just think of something and have it. You know what I mean? Like, people, I can't remember. Someone said once that, we have this internal desire as humans to go scavenge, to like go get things and collect them and then bring them back. You know what I mean? And even though we don't go do that with our food now, we don't have to go, kill our food and bring it back and, store it and all that type of stuff. We do like to go collect ideas. We do like to collect options and all that. And that's where search fits in. So it's like search. I don't know how someone could find an online only e-commerce business without SEO and without search. And so if somebody could tell me how that could happen, then I'd say, yeah, okay, SEO is dead. but it's just changing, and it really just changes with how people are searching. That's how SEO is going to change.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. And, me and Haley have always said, as long as people search things, SEO will always be alive, no matter what people say. There is always ridiculous claims that, this is dead and this is irrelevant anymore. But, if people are searching on these platforms and there are rankings to be had, and it's still alive and well.
No.
And I guess that brings me to kind of my next question, and it's probably one that's a little bit more controversial. Is TikTok a search engine?
I think so. I mean, yes, I think TikTok is a search engine. I'm just like, what is a search engine? Is it a platform that you use to search for things? Because if that's the definition we're using, I don't understand how TikTok could not be a search engine. And then I think about, okay, do my users go to TikTok to search for things that I sell? If they do, then that is a search engine for me. And they do, they do. They will ask me questions there, and they'll come from TikTok to my Shopify store and check out. So yes, I believe TikTok is a search engine. I don't know if people haven't used TikTok, for different things, because for a while I didn't use TikTok at all. I would post automatically from, a app or whatever. But then once I started going to TikTok, I realized, oh my gosh, like this is kind of cool. You can actually see what things look like on people, or you can get more information about how this thing works or why people like it. And isn't that the same thing that same types of information that people get from a search, from a reviews page, or for, like a demonstrated video or something on a website? To me, those elements are the same. So yeah, I think TikTok's a search engine.
Yeah, I really appreciate different opinions on it, because I think when I first heard someone say TikTok was a search engine, that my natural instinct was like, no, that's kind of like, you're just saying that, you're just trying to sell your TikTok services. But I think, the more, and we've definitely discussed this on a previous podcast as well, where we talked about, and I think we came to the conclusion that we didn't agree that it was a search engine. But I think I've had to think about it, and there's some conversations I've had at Brighton as well. I think I would categorize it more as a search experience rather than an engine. And I think my reasons for that are, I mean, there's no like real definition or true fact on what a search engine is. But the way I see it is that Google and Bing and other engines allow you to access any type of information or application on the internet. And applications like TikTok or Instagram provide a search experience that return results within its own platform. So the things that, the Gen Z, the cool kids now that are using TikTok for, are like searching for cool restaurants near them, or looking for cool tech gadgets you can buy on Amazon or on Temu or whatever it may be. And I think that's really interesting to see, like, newer generations use search in such a different way. And that's why I mean, with my personal opinion, I hold it as more of an experience rather than an engine. But it's really interesting to get your perspective.
Yeah, sorry to jump in there. I guess it is like a pre-qualifier, isn't it? It's another touch point that helps to build this brand trust, but it gives brands an opportunity to kind of go, this is what it looks like on, or this is what we can do, this is the best restaurant, look at these burgers. Like, there's all of this kind of information that you can just consume very quickly and go, I'm going to book, I'm going to buy. And I don't think it works for every business. I mean, we work with a lot of like HR compliance companies where they ask the question, should we be on TikTok? I'm like, why would you be on TikTok? Like, it needs to match up, doesn't it? But I think definitely for, the e-commerce space, it's something exciting.
Yeah. And from a user perspective too, I don't even know how this happened the other day, but Brighton is coming up. Maybe the phone heard me. I have no idea. But these searches of best restaurants in San Diego came up on TikTok. So I was like, oh, I have to go back and look at that. And it's just like YouTube. When I want to see what it's going to be like in a city, I'm going to YouTube because I can actually see it, and they're walking around, all that type of stuff. And so I search TikTok like I would YouTube. So I like the search experience. I would accept that as a good answer. Nice little middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, that's it with SEOs. I mean, like, SEOs will disagree and fight over small things like a naming convention. I think inevitably the most important part is that users are going to access different platforms for different reasons. And, YouTube's a great example of that. Like, if you buy a car now, you will search for the best deals on Google, but you'll look at reviews on YouTube, and you'll look at opinions and, the best places to buy a car, and it all comes into one, really, and you use all of it to make your decision. It's not just TikTok or Google or YouTube, and it's not TikTok versus Google either. They both complement one another, and that, to me, like, if there's more opportunities as a marketer to reach my customers in creative ways, then absolutely I'll go for that.
I guess I don't know if you guys would agree with me or not, but I think that as we kind of see the rise of like the helpful content update, it shows that people aren't putting the trust in written content, and the future is more so user-generated video content, because that's where people kind of the shift is focusing on. It's more so that people trust user-generated video content as opposed to a blog that anybody could have written. I think that's what we're seeing.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Heather Physiok, but I think that's how you pronounce her last name. But she's from the States, and she has a great presentation that she gives. She gave at Brighton last year, and I believe she has one online on YouTube. But she talks about aligning these thoughts and these ideas in the user journey with like the jobs theory and jobs to be done. Because it's like, okay, just like you said, David, certain people will go here for this piece of the journey, and they'll go here for another piece of the journey. And so again, like what you said, Haley, too, about the HR situation, it's like, okay, let's take a look at the journey, and would they go to any of these places along the journey to make their decision? And then that kind of, obviously informs whether or not you need to be there. But not every platform, is for every business, but for a lot of businesses, people will jump platform to platform. So it's nice to have at least a presence there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. What excites you most about the future of SEO, and what do you hope to see in terms of advancements?
Wow, what excites me the most? I just think it's so creative and kind of unknown. I had a person on my podcast this week, and she talked about the fact that nobody has ever done this. Kate All from Simpleton Media. She said nobody has ever built a business on the backside of a pandemic. No one has ever built a business in the era of AI and large language models. So all of this is new territory to some extent. And you'd think that people who have been involved in tech for the longest would have more of an advantage, but in a way they're kind of disadvantaged because they're accustomed to doing things a certain way, and they may not be as receptive to change. And so I just feel like it's this whole innovative, revolutionary time, and so I just think anything's possible, and it's a really exciting industry to be a part of.
It definitely is. It's really exciting, and I guess what we've not had previously is this element of creativity. Like, we can go and create videos now, we can go like collaborate across all marketing channels. It's not just we're pigeonholed into doing this one thing forever. So Crystal, where can people find you?
Oh, wow. Well, of course, the Simple and Smart SEO Show podcast. You can find that wherever you listen to podcasts. I release episodes every Wednesday. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Crystal Waddell. And just a little fun one for you. I'm Knowledge Vomit on many social media platforms. So let that stick in your head for a while.
I love that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And as always, thank you so much for listening, guys. Please comment, like, rate, and subscribe on all of the platforms that you listen to our podcast on. And stay tuned for next week's episode. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Crystal.
It's going to be really difficult to tell what's real.